Every night we get together for Shabbat, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and I say welcome, and I tell you how glad I am that you're here. And tonight I think I can say those things with new spirit and new sincerity. I am really glad you're here, all of you. It gives me great hope after a week of hopelessness. Seeing all of you here brings light into this place after a week that has been so dark. And the fact that all of you are here, many of you for the very first time, underscores for me what I think may be the most important thing I've learned this week, that we are not alone. Some of the most meaningful moments of encouragement our community has received over the past few days have come from those who have never even stepped foot inside this building. Our neighbors and our friends, members of other religious communities who have made a special effort over the past few days just to let us know that they are with us. We've received beautiful letters from Cardinal DiNardo representing our Catholic neighbors from across the Archdiocese. A beautiful letter from the executive body of the Islamic Society of Greater Houston. Tonight we're joined by a number of elected officials who have made space in their calendars, which are very busy, to be with us tonight. And so I want to briefly acknowledge and welcome Representative Sarah Davis, Judge Robert Schaefer. I want to welcome and acknowledge School Board Trustee Elizabeth Santos, the Consul General of France, Alexis Andre, and candidates in this year's elections who are with us, Mr. Todd Litton and Mr. Gordon Goodman. If there are others of you who are here this evening whom I have forgotten or inadvertently omitted, please accept my apologies, because I want you to know that we see you and we thank you. After last Shabbat's tragedy, people from around this neighborhood came by the synagogue to drop off flowers and notes, cards expressing sympathy after what was the worst anti-Semitic violent crime in our country's history. Our congregation received kind and loving messages from people around this neighborhood and beyond it, expressing sadness and shock, and I would guess that many of you in this room received messages like that too. It was deeply heartening and humbling to learn that they are with us so steadfastly. It feels good to know that we share the same sense of grief. But I'll tell you in full confession tonight that the one thing that I don't share with many of those well-wishers is the sense of surprise. The shock that this could happen to us. I want to say clearly that over the course of world history, we Jews have never known the kind of liberty and security that we enjoy in this country. No group of Jews has ever had the experience of citizenship and security that American Jews have. And yet, as the poet Marge Piercy writes, we Jews are all born of wanderers, with shoes under our pillows, and a memory of blood that is ours raining down. The Jewish story is a story about hurriedly lacing up shoes and mournfully but efficiently scrubbing away bloodstains. We've gotten really good at it. But the Jewish story is much bigger than blood and shoes. This week's Torah portion, just like this week in our nation's history, begins with death. The portion is called Chaye Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. But ironically enough, the story has nothing at all to do with the life of Sarah, because the very first thing that happens in it is that Sarah dies. But in the Bible, just like in real life, death is never the end of the story. The portion starts with death, but it's not a story about mourning or grief. It's a story about life and love, companionship and hope and endurance. Ours is that kind of story too. Torah does not overlook or paper over the fact that death is real, that grief and sadness exist, and that they touch every life. The Bible makes a point of telling us that when Sarah dies, Abraham grieved desperately. Vayavo Avraham lispod l'Sarah v'livkota, it says. Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. The Bible's use of two different verbs here, to mourn and to weep, indicates the depths of his sadness, the way his grief overflows its banks. And then something strange happens. In the very next verse, the very next moment in the story, the text redirects us and sends us in an entirely different direction. Without even taking a breath, the Torah continues, Vayakom Avraham me'al pnei meto, and then Abraham got up, and he rose from beside his dead. Without the slightest dramatic hesitation, the Bible's prose fires off the verbs in quick staccato progression. Vayavo, he came, lispod, to mourn, v'lifkota, to weep, vayakom, and then he got up. How did he do that? We know how paralyzing grief can be. We know how sadness can incapacitate us. Some of us have experienced those feelings very recently indeed. Sadness too big to be described, too powerful to be contained. But then Abraham does something we have all struggled to do this week. He gets up, stopping his grief somehow. He moves on. He goes to the next thing. How did he do it? How does he get up? What motivates him to rise from beside the one he had lost and return to real life? Part of the answer is that he got up because he had to. There were things to be done. There was work to do. He needs to prepare a burial plot. He needs to find a wife for his son. There are things that need to be taken care of, and one cannot stay inside grief's bosom forever. American Jewry has been sitting Shiva all week. We have mourned and we have wept. We've read obituaries and listened to heartbreaking interviews. We have learned the names and the stories of those we have lost. But now there's work to do. Because death is not the end. This whole Torah portion describes a long, dramatic arc, beginning with the death of Sarah and leading up to the beginning of the next generation of her family's life. And the Bible wants us to learn from this geometry of loss. It wants us to learn that death will be resolved, but not in anger. The resolution of death is not revenge or hatred. The resolution of death is comfort and companionship. Soon after Abraham gets up to attend to his to-do list, we meet a new character for the first time, Rebekah, who will become Isaac's wife. When we meet her, the text wants to demonstrate to us the quality of her character by the way she interacts with others. You may remember the story that she sees a group of weary travelers in the desert and she hurries outside to take care of them. She brings them water and food. She provides a place for them to spend the night and looks after their animals as well. This is a sign, the sages tell us, that Rebekah is demonstrating that she's the right one to become Isaac's wife, to continue the line of Abraham, and that she is worthy of God's blessing. The way that she shows generosity and kindness to others becomes the first crank of the great cosmic wheel of blessing. That's how we move that mechanism forward, through our own kindness and generosity, through our refusal to stay cloistered in our tents and our willingness to step outside to extend a hand of help and kindness and love. You know the story. Soon after that moment, Isaac and Rebekah fall in love. He brings her home to meet the family, and they get married. And as improbable as it sounds, just one short chapter after the death of Sarah, the text tells us, Vayehaveha vayinachem Yitzchak acharei imo. Isaac loved her, and thus he found comfort after his mother's death. Vayinachem Yitzchak. Isaac found comfort through love and togetherness. It's a beautiful Hebrew word, vayinachem. The Hebrew word nechama means comfort. Nechama, comfort and compassion. Suddenly, after death and mourning, this family has risen from its grief to find the way to comfort, and it gets there through togetherness and love and hope. We know better than anyone that there are times we need to be alone. There are times we need the comfort of solitude and silence, and there are times, then, we need to let in the light, to step outside and accept the extended hand of friendship. What was it that lifted Abraham from beside the corpse of one he had loved? What brought him out of the darkness of mourning and the desperate hopelessness of loss? It's the same thing that lifts all of us up today. The nechama, the comfort that comes only from the closeness of others. We sang just a few moments ago, let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. That's what Abraham and Isaac and every generation of our people has learned time after time, generation after generation. It is peace and friendship that bring us nechama, that bring us the comfort we so desperately need, the closeness of other souls, the nearness of other people. We need companionship. We need the reality of community, and we need to know that there are others who will look after us when we need them. We need to be reminded of the many, many people who fill this sanctuary, people who have extended their words and their hearts to us to tell us, don't be afraid. We've got your back. This has been a sad and difficult week for our community, with 11 funerals, 11 burials of our Jewish brothers and sisters in Pittsburgh, but those burials are not the end of our story. Grief and tears are not the end of our story. The end of the story is what all of us here have built together through faith and through courage and the willingness to love and be loved. Now, love can't stop evil. It hasn't stopped it yet. But love reminds us that evil isn't all there is. There's never been a terrorist or an assassin so powerful that he can exterminate love or murder hope. All across our country tonight, thousands upon thousands of people are gathering in their neighborhood synagogues to attend services like this one. In hundreds of cities across our country, people of every faith and every imaginable background have come to be with us. Tonight, the light of Shabbat candles like these illuminate our entire nation, and the sweetness of our holy day lifts up countless souls. This is a great nechama, a great comfort to all of us. And to close, I want to teach you another Jewish lesson about nechama, about comfort, and this one comes through God's word, through the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah says to the people a brief address which contains 3 commandments. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elohechem. Be comforted, my people, says the Eternal One. But he doesn't stop there. Nachamu Ami, be comforted, my people. Harimi bakoach kolech, raise your voice strongly. Harimi al tirai, raise your voice and do not be afraid. These are 3 critical commandments for us to hold on to this week, none of which is extraneous. let us be comforted. Let us raise up our voices, and let us not be afraid. If we will obey these words, if we will allow ourselves to be comforted, to feel the warmth of love and companionship, and if we will raise our voices bravely and proudly, and if, maybe most difficult of all, we refuse to be afraid, then together our voices will join together to add a new harmony to our nation's great unfinished symphony, so that we and all those around us will find on this Shabbat the blessing of Nechama, of God's peace and comfort. Shabbat Shalom.